Judaism to love your neighbor as yourself. You're way past that. You're into Pharisaic Judaism. And what is Pharisaic Judaism? They travel land and sea. They encompass land and sea to make one convert. And in Matthew 23, Yeshua said, and finally, at long last, when he's made this bad news, you've made him into twice the child of hell that you yourselves are. How can a man who knows Torah be a child of the living devil? Because the motive of the study for Torah and the desire for the knowledge of Torah is not to change me so I can stop lying, so I can stop being deceitful, so I can stop being crafty. No, it's to change others and to beat them over the head and judge them. And instead of withholding judgment, you become a conduit to pour out judgment upon them. Does any of this make sense?
That makes sense.
I said, does any of this make sense?
Amen.
Now we're going to go to today's parsha. Devarim 21:10. Deuteronomy 21:10. Let's see that Yahweh's rachamim vis-a-vis some issues that we're going to encounter here. I have a lot to cover, so I'm going to have to do a lot of reading. So I need you to pay attention.
Okay.
Turn to your neighbor and say he's going to be doing reading.
We're going to be doing reading.
Only for the sake of time, so I need you to pay attention. Devarim 21:10. Again, we welcome our friends and our mishpacha around the world, and I pray Yahweh will feed your spirit with rachamim and understanding on this Shabbat. When you go forth to war against your enemies, and Yahweh your Elohim has delivered them into your hands, and you have taken them captive. Number one, we can apply captivity to either a physical prisoner as a result of war, upon which, of course, the Geneva Conventions are based. Either this person can be a captive in a natural war or in a supernatural war. Because what does Ephesians chapter 6 tell us? We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against what? Spiritual powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual wickedness. So when Yahweh talks about people being taken captive, it could either be in a natural war in which Israel is engaged in, or it could be in a supernatural war in our lives where we wrestle against the enemy, the world, the flesh, and the devil, and Yahweh gives us the victory. Why? Because Yahweh always gives us the victory. When does Yahweh not give you the victory? Never. Yahweh always gives you the victory. When does Yahweh not give you the victory? If you are walking in victorious Zoe, abundant life, you're always going to have captives that you're going to have to deal with, because Yahweh is causing you to triumph over your employer. Yahweh is causing you to triumph over your enemies. When a man's ways please Yahweh, he makes even his enemies to be at shalom with him. Yahweh is giving you victory over the world, the flesh, the devil. In other words, when you are on Yahweh's side as a born-again child of Israel, not only are you always going to receive Yahweh's victory, ultimately, he always will give you the victory. We need to know how to deal with the captives in mercy, rachamim, because if you're warring the good war of emunah, if you're fighting the good fight of emunah, you're always going to have captives dropped into your lap.
Amen.
I have victory over that church pastor who's teaching lies. I have victory over him. Now he's a captive. He's a captive to truth. How are you going to deal with him now? That's in the supernatural. Not in the natural. That's in the supernatural. You follow me? Or you're at work and you've been praying and praying and praying for a new manager. The old manager, he was the old boss. Now the old boss is not with a different company. He's sitting at the desk right next to you. He's your captive. Yahweh has answered your prayers. He's taken away that boss. He's taken away that supervisor. He's taken away that client of yours, and instead of dancing over his grave, now Yahweh says, now he's at your mercy. He is at your mercy. He's defeated. He's been ridiculed. He's been laid low, because Yahweh has given you the victory through prayer, through fasting, through steadfastness, through faithfulness. How are you going to deal with that captive in your life? Because if you're walking in Yahweh, you are always in a spiritual battle. And if you are always in a spiritual battle, Yahweh always will give you the victory eventually if you keep on keeping on.
Amen.
Keep it on.
So the question is, when those captives come, how are you going to be dealing with them, right? Because they're going to come. And when we're in the world, we murder them and make sure we cut out their liver, and like the pagans, eat it and dance over their heads like the Muslims do publicly. In Israel, it shouldn't be that way. We have to know to deal with our captives in Rachamim. And a lot of these folks who are called Messianics and Nazarene Israelites, just the opposite. When they see someone down, when they see a brother who's weak, when they see a brother who has really, really been ripped apart, right? What do?
Rejoice.
They kick them. They join the party. They join the opposition. They join the cacophony of vociferous, voluminous voices. They join in. And personally speaking, I'll be honest, can we talk?
We can talk.
How many are enjoying?
Amen.
Personally speaking, I've had, in our time of testing, as a congregation, and me personally, I'm shocked. You would think I would get in a letter or get an email, say, Brother Moshe, this is one of the most difficult times in your ministry. This is one of the most difficult times you've gone through. Not only are we with you, not only do we love you, we usually support you. We've been supporting you financially at $30, $40 a month. Here's $80. We want to increase our support to $80 a month to show you that we love you in a tangible way. You would think that, wouldn't you, Chris? When the enemy has a brother or sister, down, temporarily under the weight of oppression, it is at that time that we as a people need to go and learn what this means. I would have mercy and not sacrifice. And all that ties into polygamy. How you treat your brother and sister when they're down, when they're outcast, determines if you're showing them mercy. When they're down, when they're hurting. Everybody loves a winner. Everybody loves you when things are going good. But what happens when in their life they're down, they're out, they're hurting? Are you going to join the party and kick them when they're down? How about when you're taken captive? Would you like your brothers and sisters, when you're taken captive by the enemy? Because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against spiritual wickedness in high places. How would you want to be treated when you're taken captive temporarily? Yahweh's going to give you the victory.
Yes.
You want to be dealt with in what? In extra rachamim, especially when you're taken captive. And that is what patriarchal marriage, as we're going to get into, is here. It's not about sex with 5 wives. It's not about sex with 4 wives. Because there's only so much sex, brothers and sisters, you can have. The rest of the time you've got to live with a person. And in those days, there was no Viagra. And in those days, you couldn't see Alice. You had to see Yahweh. All right? If you wanted more sex, you couldn't see Alice. There was no Alice. Right? You had to go see Yahweh. So this understanding that those who engage in patriarchal marriage from today's Torah parsha are just a bunch of sex fiends shows how little knowledge, how little Torah knowledge a person has. It's like the 613 mitzvot syndrome. We always believed, Raina, that there are 613 mitzvot. We always believed that a person who desires to live a patriarchal lifestyle must have a sex problem or must have a sex problem with their first wife. How they get from point A to point B is beyond me. You know, they must not be satisfied at home. This has nothing to do with this. Okay, let's talk about today's parsha. And also, let me say,